Hi, I'm Johnny, and welcome to the Justice for Georgia podcast. I'm the co-founder of Justice for Georgia, and I'm also an Atlanta area activist.
I'm Mr. Ambitious, and I'm an Atlanta area activist. I've also been active in the national movement for the past 7 years. I'm the brother of JAYVIS Benjamin, and I represent the family of JAYVIS Benjamin along with my mother, and we've been fighting for 7 years for justice on his behalf. And this is Johnny and Mr. Ambitious Presents, the Justice for Georgia podcast. This podcast is going to be about what justice is, how we can fight for it for families who've been affected by police violence, police brutality, and just systemic racism. And so with this podcast, we're going to be finding a voice for ourselves and other families who have been affected in the state of Georgia and helping you see them as they are and how you can help as well.
This podcast is not just about the cases in Georgia. This is also about how they impact local legislation, highlighting systematic racism, also exposing the truth in Black history, and talking about the Black experience.
And that's why we're Justice for Georgia podcast.
Hi, I'm Britt. I'm one of the other co-founders. So what is Justice for Georgia? Justice for Georgia is a nonprofit here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we work with families who have lost a loved one to police brutality or white supremacy.
And you're probably wondering, what do we do for the families? We set up petitions, websites, GoFundMes, as well as assist with public relations and social media posts to spread awareness.
We also protest on behalf of the families because it's our job as a community to lift these families up, not their job to be in the streets. They're fighting a whole other beast with the cases. We also set up fundraising campaigns for the families and pretty much just make sure they're taken care of, whether it be babysitting services, whether it be helping with, paying for therapy, or whether it be assisting with a family reunion. We just make sure that these families are completely covered. So how did Justice for Georgia start? Well, on May 29th, a lot of people gathered at Centennial to protest George Floyd being killed. Pretty much that's when Hannah, who is the founder for Promote Positivity Movement, started the line of solidarity right in front of the rings at Centennial Park. And that's right where Johnny and I met, and we were protesting every single day. We were sharing stories of the many names here in Georgia who were being affected by police brutality and white supremacy. So on June 27th is when a lot of the moms came together and did a Mother's March highlighting the many stories here in Georgia.
And on August 7th, that's when we decided to start our Instagram page. That's where Justice for Georgia got its start. And we posted the stories that happened here in Georgia. We followed up with action items and how you could donate to the family, how you can help the family, petitions you can sign. And that's what we're still doing to this day now on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now YouTube.
We wanted to set our page apart from not just sharing the stories, but it was very important for us to share what you can do to help. A lot of people like to highlight these stories, but they don't say specifically what you can do to help. Johnny and I knew that it was very imperative that there's actions that need to be taken, not just hearing the stories. So that's why we wanted to make our page a little different compared to everyone and give them action items. That means contacting district attorneys. That means signing a petition if a petition is there. That means donating to the families if they have a GoFundMe set up, or if they put their Cash App out there, because a lot of this costs money. It's not just you burying your loved one, unfortunately. You now have a whole beast of a case that you have to fight against a whole police union that already has their defense ready, even if they shot your loved one in the back. You have flyers that you have to print. You have traveling that you have to do as far as March on Washington and getting your story out. You have counseling that you have to pay for. And on top of that, you've lost a living, working person, which means that you've lost another form of income into your household. It doesn't just affect the person who's killed, it affects everybody.
And what are the goals for Justice for Georgia? Well, one of the goals we want to is impact local legislation. We want to impact local legislation by contacting the district reps directly and have them to create the bills that we want to see, that will create the change we want to see in our community. This is very important because after the district rep passes the bill, then the state reps will vote on the bill. That's when we start to contact the state reps directly and also apply pressure on them to vote the way we want to, so that way they can hear our voice, know what we want, make our demands heard, because basically local legislation impacts your front door. So this is something that people really need to care about, and not just national politics. It is time for us to take this seriously, to step up and also hold these politicians accountable even on the local level.
Another goal of ours that we would like to see happen is to abolish qualified immunity. Now, there's only 2 ways you can abolish qualified immunity, yet it is still possible. The first way is through local legislation. How is that possible? You can pressure your district rep to literally pass a bill that says abolish qualified immunity, and then your state reps can vote for it to be passed locally. A second way that we can abolish qualified immunity is through Congress. Now, we already know we've already been having issues with getting Congress to pass the type of bills that we would want, so that's why it's so important, like Johnny said, to make sure you vote on local legislation, but make sure you're also knowledgeable about local legislation, because they are supposed to represent your voice, and if they're not representing your voice, you have every right to vote them out.
And as far as our last goal, our main and most important, to my heart, goal is to hold the officers accountable. If we don't hold them accountable, there's no consequences. And if there's no consequences, there's no change in their behavior. How are we going to say we want there to be a change in society unless we actually make changes that affect the people who are causing the problem? You see, many times people will say that the mature people are the ones who lead situations. Well, in this one, it's the opposite. The most immature person in the room is the officer who decides to be fearful, to not follow instructions, to not be able to follow his training, take a life, and then claim that because he was irresponsible, because he was immature with the training and the tools offered to him, we have to look past it because he's stressed out. That doesn't make sense. They are giving every tool and every reason to not be stressed out. And yet here we are, week after week, day after day, asking ourselves, why is this happening again? If we hold them accountable in all the ways that they can be held accountable, a lot of this goes away. Think about the fact that not only are you having officers be promoted because they're killing people, they're getting free vacations, we're giving them a raise in their pay, and then also on top of that, we're giving them status in society to say they're heroes somehow for killing someone who didn't have a gun in their back. This doesn't make any sense, so we gotta do something to change this. If we hold them accountable, the amount of accidental shootings, the rate at which they're happening will almost eliminate itself. It's a problem with the easy solution. So for me, holding the officers accountable will not only bring peace to myself, because my brother does deserve justice, and every family deserves justice, because if you don't hold a murderer accountable, what's to stop them from murdering someone else? The reason why we put murderers in jail is because they've proven that they have the ability to take a life. Why are we going to let them walk around free with the same weapon they used to shoot someone, issued by the state, and not expect them to do it again?
Another reason we need to hold officers accountable is because we cannot hold civilians to a higher standard than so-called trained police officers. Civilians are often put in situations that are much more stressful than the officer's position. For example, an officer points a gun at a civilian. This officer is in a position of authority. This civilian is already terrified out of their mind.
Right. How can they be more level-headed? And they be more able to handle a situation they weren't trained for? But a police officer actually deals with this every day.
Every single day. And yet, the civilian has all the pressure on them to behave appropriately. Meanwhile, the officer can get scared, they can panic, they can pull out the gun, they can shoot them, and then still face no consequences for it. Meanwhile, if a civilian doesn't do everything the officer says, they could be shot and killed on the spot. Or even if they do everything the officer says, they could still be shot and killed on the spot.
Not to mention, you can get arrested for resisting arrest. How does that make any damn sense? Like seriously, we're gonna justify murdering someone because they resisted arrest to the fact that there was no reason to arrest them, while they had no weapon and somehow ended up dead.
If you're gonna charge somebody with resisting arrest, you have to have an actual crime that you were trying to arrest them for first. And I don't believe we should even have to have that conversation. And why are you so afraid if you're the one with the badge, you're the one with the gun, you're the one with the training, you're the one in the position of authority, you're the one with the bulletproof vest on, you're the one with the backup. You have no reason to be afraid. A civilian that's unarmed, caught off guard, doesn't know what's going on, has every reason in the book to be afraid. So why can't you be empathetic and understanding in this situation?
So holding people accountable is not just the right thing to do, but it's the safest thing to do. We'll get these people who don't belong in the position out of it. And for me, justice is such a profound statement. It's a profound verb. It's a profound noun. To say what justice truly is for me is, I don't think I have enough time to really go into it. But if I was to boil it down to just one thing, justice would be the person who wronged someone to at least, in some kind of way, feel bad about it, change their behavior. Because we all know the best apology is change behavior, and then right the wrong. You can't tell me you're doing any of that when you go back to work as if nothing happened with a raise.
And justice for me, the way it looks like is that if you murder someone and you are in the wrong, that person was unarmed, that person posed no threat to you, you get charged for that murder. If a civilian murders someone, we expect that person to be charged with murder. But when the police officer murders someone, we expect the opposite. Even if the situation didn't dictate any force of violence or just any suspicion of that person in general, we still expect that police officer to get off. Why? Because of qualified immunity. And that makes no sense at all. Imagine a civilian killing someone and then saying, well, you shouldn't be able to charge me with that because, I'm a lawyer, I'm a landscaper, I'm a firefighter, my job is dangerous. That doesn't make it okay to murder someone unjustly. If you murder someone unarmed that posed no threat to you, you should serve time for murder. I don't understand why this seems to be such a difficult concept to grasp, but they have to be held accountable by serving time when they commit a crime.
So at the end of each of our podcasts, we're going to ask you to do some action steps, some calls to action to make sure that you're engaging and involving yourself in what we're talking about. Because to just talk about this stuff, we got enough of that out there. We want to actually see change, and we're going to be the first ones to do what we're asking you guys to do. So follow us on IG at JusticeForGA, and if you go to the description below, you'll see there are steps on how you can sign a petition for Jabril Robinson and help us get to the signatures we need by December 9th.
Again, this is Johnny and Mr. Ambitious presents Justice for Georgia podcast.